He is truly super. So as we turn to Mike Kelly, we ask you, your first superlative, biggest stat that jumps out for a skater.
I think it's that Connor has 40 goals in 48 games. And the pace that he's 4 off his career high. And so it's the best player in the world is going to just do this now. So let's go a little deeper on that one. Half his goals have come off the rush. That probably doesn't surprise anybody. Okay, well, okay, 20 goals off the rush. There's a little context on that. It's twice as much as anyone else. But also, it's the most he's ever had in a season ever. 19 was his previous high. So before the All-Star break, the fastest guy in the world and the best player with speed has already scored more goals off the rush than he's ever scored in a season. And when you look at, okay, well, how do you explain why he scored 40 goals in 48 games? One of the things that he's doing this year is he's shooting it through guys. Like, we know he can go around guys, and we know he can get breakaways, but what he has scored a lot of goals on this year is shooting it through guys and beating goalies with his shot. Yeah. And it wouldn't surprise me, because this guy works his tail off in the offseason, if this is something that he has probably spent some time practicing. It's a new way for him to score in a way that he always can score, which is off the rush. And that's what the best players do. It's not just about, hey, I want to score more goals, so I'm going to try to skate fast like McDavid. Well, you can't. It's how can I add to my toolbox with what I've already got? I've seen great net front guys do it by getting better at deflections. I think we're watching Connor do it by finding yet another way to score in that situation.
Let's just stop and appreciate that for a second. The settled best player in the game, just in terms of the offensive skills he brings, is redefining how good he is in front of our eyes. Yes. He is going to shatter career highs for goal scoring. You're exactly right. It's astounding how much more effective he has been off the rush. But to me, it's like it's an extension of what we've seen him do in the past. He's always been good off the rush. He's great at zone entries, but off the rush now in stride. I think it's coming in stride, and he gets goaltenders on their back foot before they're set, and he's not communicating much at all, because when you take that split second, you pause and you load up a shot rather than fire it off while in stride. You're communicating some information. You're giving that goaltender a bit of a sense on where you're going to go. He eliminates a lot of that by shooting it in stride. Plus, nobody's got faster, greater foot speed than Connor McDavid. So in stride, but that stride comes from the fastest, the most alarming foot speed in the game today. So it's lethal. It really is. And again, redefining what the best player looks like in the game.
I kept hearing the words never and ever. That's a big deal. 97.
And I never like to use those words.
Right, but you can't avoid them, right? Next, Kells, best goaltending performance in a single game.
As we approach the All-Star break, we look at these things. The best goaltender performance in a single game, the way I would evaluate it is goals saved above expected. Where did you land on that? Not always the most saves, didn't have to have a shutout, but based on what your team allowed, how well did you play? And nobody played better than Matt Murray against the Dallas Stars.
Really?
I believe on December the 6th. That was the single game high, 4.71 goals saved above expected. Karel Vejmelka, he's on that list a lot in Arizona because he plays well and a team gives up a ton. But you go back to this game, and Murray made 44 saves. He did get a shutout. Toronto actually did an okay job of keeping a decent amount not right in front of them. But with that kind of volume and, a decent amount of quality split into there as well, that was, by that measure, the goaltending performance of the season.
Interesting.
Great note I just got here as well. Dallas had 7 power plays in that game.
Whoa!
So, your goalie did well.
Yeah, and I tell you what, if you're a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, it comes up in a really great context, right? Because the key question mark going into this season was who's going to emerge as the number one. And I think really, when you look at Samsonov, you look at Murray, perhaps you'd accept that Murray was the de facto. We hope he's going to be our number one. But I think at a minimum, you can say we're hedging our bets. We're bringing in 2 very credible goaltenders and creating a competition for 1A. Good to know. Matt Murray, he's been solid. He's been, a bit of a difficult start given the injury out of the gate. And then the upside to that, beyond that, Samsonov really appears to be emerging as your number one going forward. So some healthy competition going on at the goaltending position for Toronto.
And the numbers clearly bear that out. Okay, Kells, biggest offensive anomaly.
We're going to see them tonight. We're going to see them against Rick Tocchet.
Ooh.
It's the Seattle Kraken. They have scored more goals at 5-on-5 than any team in the league. You look at the expected goals right underneath. What are we creating? Our chances, our volume, all of that. Actually 26th in the NHL. And that differential between their expected goals and their actual goals scored is 40. So they've kind of scored 40 more goals than they probably should. Now, as the season goes on, you will tend to see regression with a larger sample, right? If at the end of the season, they are, what, you keep going by that kind of math up at like 70 in their differential, I'd be shocked. I will be shocked. So I do expect some regression, but think how far we are already into the season.
Yeah.
Think about the balance scoring that they get.
Yeah.
It doesn't explain it statistically, but there is something to that, okay, maybe our top guy or two can have an off night or an off week, and we've got scoring on every single line. Our D can score all of it. So I don't think it's this thing that's going to come crashing down. I think it will correct to some degree, but that's what Seattle's been doing.
I think you'd be more concerned if you saw it across a single line, and that's where an important slice of the production was coming from. But to your point, I'd have to refresh the numbers, but a couple of weeks ago I looked at it. There were roughly 12 players on the Kraken roster that were tracking at a 40-plus point season or better. I mean, that's impressive depth. To your point, when you're getting it across that wide a span, probably less regression speaks well to what we're getting from this group up front.
Fascinating. Last one.
All right.
Here we go, Kels. Biggest defensive anomaly.
This one, I love it. And I say this as a compliment to the LA Kings, really, because they're 1 point out of top spot in their division. They have a 600 points percentage. They have the worst goaltending in the NHL.
Yeah.
But that shows you how good they are defensively and offensively as well. But you look at teams that are in a playoff spot right now and where they rank in terms of having the worst goals saved above expected, so isolated goaltending. It isn't close. LA's dead last. The Flames are 24th. The Oilers are 23rd. But they're, not even in the same stratosphere as LA. 40 goals below expected. That's almost a goal a game. It's almost like you're starting a game down 1-0 every night.
Yeah.
But the Kings, part of it, the Kings are so good defensively. They allow the fewest shots from the inner slot of any team. They can get away with it because they play with such good defensive structure, and they're a good all-around team. So, for me, I say this not in a critical way necessarily, but what if the Kings can just get adequate goaltending? What if they can get, whether it's Copley or whoever in the net, what if you go out, or what would it cost you to go and get Sam Montembeault from the Montreal Canadiens? Less than $1 million. He's having an unreal year for the Canadiens. You wouldn't know it necessarily from the traditional stats, but he's been so good. Or they get it internally. Either way, they get a little bit better goaltending, maybe even average goaltending.
Yeah.
Watch out for the Kings.
Yeah, I suspect for Rob Blake and the rest of the management team, that's definitely a discussion that they're having at this moment and have been having for a while. I suspect the answer to that, given the circumstances, it probably comes from outside the organization, but you're exactly right. A team that plays with a whole lot of defensive structure, and they're having some young players. Fiala was a stroke of genius, in my estimation, taking advantage of a cap squeeze in Minnesota's end of the NHL, and he's slotted in and been a real bright star, a contributing factor from the third line for this group. So, in addition to the structure, they're a pretty dangerous team up front. So it's been a lot of fun to watch. Explains a healthy amount of the surprise, the defensive anomaly that you point to.
Kels, great stuff.
Good stuff.
4 for 4. He's a star.